Welcome to the first edition of the ECTAA Travel Insights podcast. This is a podcast on behalf of the Association for Travel Agents and Tour Operators. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Christian Möller. He is the Director of Transport and Distribution at ECTAA. And today we're talking about something called Multimodal Digital Mobility Services. What on earth is that? I think ultimately it refers to the possibility to book different forms of transport, ideally in a seamless way. There have been a number of proposals from the Commission, but Christian knows a lot more about this. Christian, thanks for joining us. What is this and why is it relevant to travel agents and tour operators?
Thank you, Paul, for having me on this podcast. You prescribed it very well. MDMS, there's a definition for it. It is a system that provides information, for example, on transport facilities. It can include schedules, fares, availabilities, with or without the possibility to book, reserve, and pay for transport. So as an example, what we would normally refer to an online travel agency who shows different transport options covering more than one transport operator would fall into the category of an MDMS, so a Multimodal Digital Mobility Services. We never use the term MDMS. That is something that the Commission created for their initiative. We would refer to a route planner. That's an example for an MDMS. A meta search engine is an example for an MDMS, or an online travel agency is an example for an MDMS.
But this exists already, right? I mean, it's possible to book a train and a flight in one package. What are we talking about changing here?
Indeed, it exists already. We have the opportunity nowadays to plan routings, to have visibility of different transport options, but the Commission realized something that the ordinary consumer and the industry is quite well aware of already. It's burdensome to find and book multimodal cross-border travel options. And from a travel agency and tour operator perspective, we realize it is getting difficult to have access to all kind of transport options to make it visible to consumers. So in order for consumers to book multimodal cross-border trips, they need to have the visibility. And that visibility is not always easily achievable because there are certain obstacles why this is. And the MDMS regulation was supposed to address exactly these issues to make it easy to find these travel options in a transparent way.
So if we just take a traveler who wants to get, let's say, to somewhere a little bit off the beaten track in Europe, they want to go from Brussels to Brasov, for instance, is it about just having all of the options to get there available so that they can see everything, so that they know what's the fastest way, what's the cheapest way, what the different options are? Is that what we're looking at trying to create?
Indeed, that's the ultimate goal. And of course, there are certain issues in place, obstacles, technical background. For example, if there is no train connection to certain cities, you can't create something visibility and transparency on something that's not there. So of course we know high-speed networks are not efficiently in place, connections are not there, but there are many, many transport options that are existing, but they are not easily to compare in a transparent way. And That's what the MDMS regulation would ultimately aim for.
So why does this not exist at the moment? What's preventing this from happening?
Well, it's mostly a commercial issue. The technical problems are probably more easy to fix than the commercial issues. We have a lot of strong transport operators that are even very strong in the distribution part. Let's look at railway companies, often even still near monopolistic companies, often state-owned, and they do not necessarily have the interest in sharing access to their booking facilities for indirect distributors who would be a competitor. Indirect distribution, online travel agencies, tour operators, travel agencies, are competitors in the field of distribution with these transport companies who also distribute their tickets directly.
So they want to be able to control their own distribution, as in their own ability to sell tickets on the transport option that they own or are responsible for.
Indeed, they want to control who they sell tickets at what price. They don't want to necessarily share their content with indirect distributors. and they're not necessarily interested in a complete transparency, because transparency drives competition and leads to reduced prices. So that's not necessarily in the interest of transport operators.
I would imagine that that's the type of thing that the Commission would be very interested in. And so given that that's usually the case, why have we not seen a robust proposal on MDMS so far?
There's a little bit of guessing why we haven't seen a strong proposal, but I can say we have worked on this MDMS proposal together with the Commission and many, many other stakeholders. But there are very different views on what the MDMS proposal should look like. Imagine the strong railway companies, they are state-owned. Member states have a say in the legislation process. So there was a lot of pressure on the Transport Commission in the last term to find a balance that on the one hand addresses the identified obstacles when it comes to making multimodal travel easily accessible for consumers, and on the other hand not weakening the position of these transport companies. So the Commission tried to come up with a proposal that would somehow present something, but unfortunately this was a quite weak proposal and was thus rejected by the Regulatory Scrutiny Board.
Okay. So, sorry if this sounds a bit naive, but surely it's in the interest of, for instance, the rail companies that their passengers have the easiest way possible to access their services, even if it means comparing them with other sources. I mean, this project, it seems, will be about making things easier for consumers. Why is that not in the interest of some of the transport companies?
Well, most of the large railway companies are especially strong in the domestic markets. And in the domestic markets, consumers often just buy their tickets with these transport companies. If you, for example, live in France, you probably know you get your ticket on sncf.fr. In Germany, you go to Deutsche Bahn, and this is where you find your tickets. So the cross-border part of these railway companies is relatively small to their overall sales. But to make cross-border connections bookable, all their content needs to be shared. And the Deutsche Bahn and SNCF and the likes are not really interested in facilitating this.
Okay, but let's say we had a new proposal, something that ECTAA was happy with. How would this change things for tour operators and travel agents?
What we try to achieve in what we call an ambitious MDMS proposal is to make the broadest possible content accessible on FRAND terms. So FRAND stands for fair, reasonable, and non-discriminatory. So we want to achieve that indirect distribution players get access to the broadest possible content so that we can compete with the transport options that you can find individually on the individual transport operators' channels, and compete fairly so that we have an efficient way of accessing the content and not pulling it together from the most inefficient means to present it to our consumers.
So making it easier for ECTAA members to get the information to customers.
Indeed. And what I forgot to mention earlier, MDMS on the one hand is a system in the B2C area. So if we talk online travel agencies, they present travel options to consumers. But an MDMS is also a B2B tool. So for our travel agents and tour operators, they work with content aggregators. For example, a GDS, a global distribution system, but any kind of B2B content aggregator that makes it accessible, because the average travel agency doesn't pull the content from the individual transport companies, but uses a tool to access all the content and content aggregators. So an MDMS is also a B2B MDMS. And if the B2B MDMS that the travel agency uses has problems pulling together all the content because there's a blockage from the transport operators, then that is a problem for travel agents and tour operators.
So this is really about making things easier for aggregators, which in turn will make things easier for travel agents and in turn make things easier for customers.
Exactly. We, the indirect distribution, we represent the consumer view. In order, our USP over the direct distribution is that we really create transparency and choice for consumers, and we show travel options beyond the individual offers of individual transport companies. If our members do not have access in a fair and non-discriminatory way, we cannot present these travel options to consumers in the end.
You've spoken a lot about rail. Where do the airlines stand on this?
In airlines, to be fair, the competition situation is better than in rail, but unfortunately in the air sector, we see a very strong consolidation trend, and we have very strong airline groups in Europe. We're moving in a direction that we already can see in the US, where this leads to a massively consolidated market, where some strong airlines basically divide the market and limit competition. And the stronger an airline group is, the less interested it is to have transparency and choice for consumers, because they can rely on their strong position in the market.
So you don't have the position like you have with rail, where if you want to book a flight from Ireland, you need to go through the Irish airline. However, as some airlines become stronger, they want to control their customer experience, essentially, and the